Hello again. I should sort of apologize. I'm going to just continuously be jumping all over the place because really common thing is for memories to pop up after discussing it and being like, oh yeah, that, right, that too. And I apparently did it in my testimony too, from what I'm reading. I mean, they did a shitty job of writing out what I'm sure when I finally watch the video it'll make more sense because it's so jot notey what they gave me. But I clearly was like, oh yeah, oops, I forgot this part when I was doing the testimony. Um, but actually, oh yeah, before I get to that, one thing I wanted to mention was my prom. So this is grade 12 before even in university. So like I had like no friends in school other than like there's a few acquaintances, people who put up with me, people who like somehow ended up in situations of conversing with me in a more friendly fashion than usual because I was generally perceived as a bitch in school because I was in a really bad state of mind most of the time. I was going home to be raped and beaten throughout my entire high school career. Well, I spent from September to like the end of January, beginning of February, like feeling like an okay normal student with my adoptive father. And then, um, as of February grade 9, that's when it started. So most of my high school career was being abused. So with that being most of my life, I became known as a bitch in school because I was a bitch because I was very bitchy and crabby and moody and upset and hurt and traumatized. And, somewhat took it out on people. I was very opinionated. The one time I was sort of able to assert myself and be myself was at high school. And so I was like my mean self. I was acting out a little bit. I was also fearful he was always watching me. He liked to make it feel like I was always being watched. He always told me he was watching me or had people watching me. So I always had that in the back of my mind too. But I got mouthy in school. I was opinionated. I was a bit more myself, but I was really crabby. I actually really took it out on my best friend because my adoptive father would just wind me up mentally, just like spin me right up emotionally and then send me into school. Because he thought, his methodology, he explained to me later, was he thought he was getting he was working the attitude out of me. He was giving me an opportunity to get all pissed off at him, and then I wouldn't act like that in school. Meanwhile, he was just winding me up to be a bitch all day. But anyways, um, my best friend, who eventually ended up being my spouse out of my abuse for a little while, um, he was, for his own emotional issues, he was always there, always understanding, right until the end, I guess. He got his own life at one point and like was more distant with me, but he was about the only person that was ever around. He had a crush on me since grade 8 too, so like I kind of just said to him, so you want to go to prom? And he just kind of was like, sure. But was also just like, yes! I was kind of hoping and sort of thing, so it was funny. Because at the same time, he didn't know if I was even going at all because I was so uninvolved in things and removed and recluse about a lot of stuff. But I did. I went with him. It's just, there's lots of good memories about it. And like I think somewhere I still have a picture where I wanted so bad. I had like one girl in school that I sort of felt like I was friends with. We were more acquaintances than anything. She mostly put up with me. I don't blame her. She was a nice girl anyways. But I just really wanted to like connect with her and I wanted to be like, you're my friend at the prom. So when it was picture time, when they do like pictures, she really wanted to get a picture with someone she was genuinely close with, I assume. And I just really wanted a picture with her. And so in putting up with me, thank you, Megan, you're so kind. We ended up getting like a picture of 5 people. So it was kind of silly, but it was really nice of her to put up with me in that way. I was socially awkward to say the least. But that night I ended up going outside several times, like on many, many occasions, to phone calls from him very annoyed and arguing with me because he had made this thing that like after prom we were going to go downtown and check out the bars and it was going to be all fun and cool in fancy sports car that he was giving me for my graduation. He still has it, or I think he has it. Maybe he sold it. I don't know. He never like really gave it to me, but he said he gave it to me for my graduation. And you know, all dressed up and da da da. And he was like, "Do you want Chris to come?" And then I thought Chris was going to be busy, so we had said no. And then Chris wasn't going to be busy, so I was like, "Yes." I called him up and asked, "Can Chris come instead?" And he got really really upset at that. And then he was having issues with repairing the car and making it work so that it could all happen. And we just ended up endlessly arguing on the phone like every 10 minutes. And so Chris was just constantly kind of standing there waiting for me while I was outside arguing on the phone with him, which is sad. And we missed like a lot of dancing and stuff, but we did dance some and we saw some events and stuff. It's funny though how it's such a big social thing, really. It is. And I just wasn't involved in the social groups of high school, like at all. So in that sense I was very removed and like me to a lot of it, but I went to my prom and it was a disaster. Yeah, so there's just a lot of arguing, and that was just something that he did a lot. He really wanted to like insert himself into my life in an unhealthy fashion and not really let me be a child, I guess, in a lot of ways. And something else that I forgot to mention was in this first year of university, I actually had a genuine breakdown right around Christmas. It was like, there's exams around Christmas, right? Because that's the end of one of the semesters, yeah. So it was right around exam time, so there was like no classes that it was interfering with, but if the situation didn't get sorted out, I would have got screwed for exams. Thankfully, it did get sorted out. But what happened was we were in another really big fight, and it was the middle of the night, and I was studying, and he was somewhere else. He wasn't even at the house, and we were arguing over the phone. And he told me, "That's it. I'm done with you. I don't want anything to do with you. Pack your shit and get out." Again. And I was just like, I was done. I mentally imploded and was just like, he had absolutely convinced me that I couldn't make it in life without him, that I wouldn't be able to get through school without him, and if I couldn't get through school, I wouldn't be able to get a career, which means I was going to end up just like my mother, poor and not doing anything with my life and not capable and just nothing. And that's not life, that's not living, so I'd rather just die. And I didn't really have it in me to like necessarily try suicide, so I was like, I'm just gonna go and be a mute in a mental ward because I can't do that. I can't apparently survive in life without you, and you don't want anything to do with me. So I like threw on I had like varying grades of clothing, so there was like my good coat and my bad coat, my good boots and my bad boots. In terms of like, I guess if I was gonna go be mucky, I'd wear my bad stuff, and if I'm gonna go be all like out and wearing fancy wear, I'd wear my good stuff or whatever. I don't know. So I went through on all my bad wear, my bad coat and my bad boots, and just went walking, crying my eyes out. And we didn't actually live too far from the hospital. It was like a 20-minute walk, not even, and it took me way longer because I actually went all the back ways and went a way I hoped like nobody would find me because I didn't want to be found. And at first I just at first I just sat outside of the hospital in like this little ravine place, and that's where I threw my coat and my boots. Did I throw my boots? Yeah. And I had brought my slippers with me, and I put my slippers on. I don't know, I was in a crazy moment. And then I also believe I cut off my hair. I had a long braid. He had me growing out my hair, and I was just trying to like remove identifiers. I think I even threw away my bra, which is retarded, but I did that. I think I did. I think that's what I remember, or I threw it in the garbage or something because I was like, that's I liked a very specific brand, and I was trying to remove all identifiers of myself. And I then found just a random door on like the side of the hospital. It wasn't the front door or anything like that. And I walked in, and then I found a random bathroom, and I locked myself in the bathroom, and I turned out the lights, and I was just kind of there. And if they hadn't had an event that night where, like, someone apparently who was from the 7th floor, so, like, from psych, uh, got out or went missing or was wandering or something, they were looking for someone. And if that wasn't a thing, like, I probably wouldn't have got found for a lot longer. But I just then sat there in the bathroom, like, kind of rocking back and forth, driving myself crazy slowly, I guess. Feeling like I was just going to spend the rest of my life as a mute and not do anything and not talk and not. And then someone incoming looking for this other person a security guard ended up, like, coming and opening the door. And he was trying to probe me and talk to me and ask me things, and I just wasn't answering, and I was freaked out, but also just, like, adamant to be quiet. But then he threatened that if I didn't speak, he was going to have to call the police and have me arrested. So I just said a few words about, like, that I didn't want to live, I believe is what I did. And he just kind of was like, all right, you have to come with me or something. I can't remember exactly what happened, but I ended up, like, going with him. I don't believe he had to touch me or anything. I just got up and, like, slowly walked with him to emerge and sat there. And they ended up putting me in, like, a little room with a round hole window on it and, like, a bed with arm clasps and stuff. So, you know, their little psych area. And Dr. Yu came and spoke with me and just kind of leaned on the wall while I ranted about how all I do is hurt people because my adoptive father had me convinced that I was destroying his brain and destroying him as a person with all of my bad behavior, and I was a very bad person and very emotionally destructive and da 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 da. And so I was like, well, all I do is hurt people. All I ever do, that's all I do. I'm good for nothing. All I do is cause harm to everyone else. And so that's what I just kept kind of saying to him, among, I don't know, plenty of other things. I'm sure it's documented somewhere. But I don't remember exactly what I said. I was all crazy. I was just like, I hurt people and I hurt myself and I want to die. And so they were basically like, harm to yourself, harm to others. Okay, we'll admit you. And he talked to me more than that, but yeah, that was their conclusion. And I gave them, my name had been changed at this point, but I gave them my previous name, so I still couldn't be found. But at this point, he had been looking all night for me, my adoptive father, and finally had located me under that name, and then told, like, he came in. Yeah. He finally found me, like, in the AM of the morning, like 5 or 6. And he said to give my real name and to tell them that I was just freaking out and that I'm okay now and I just want to go home. But otherwise to, like, shut the fuck up and stop talking was his big thing. Just stop. And I was like, okay. I was really scared, but I was also like, okay, whatever. And he talked to them and he wanted to get me out, but I had already been admitted, which means I was being transferred to the actual psych hospital, which was in another area of London. So they basically were like, the process has been started, she's a patient, we can't just, like, let her go now. We have to, like, put her through and have her seen by doctors, and only only when they assess her as okay can we let her go or release her. So I got transferred to the other hospital, which was super awkward because it was by people that were saying that they went to my university, and I was like, oh god, don't recognize me. But of course they wouldn't. Like, tens of thousands of people go there. But anyway, it was awkward. Got transferred there, and then which even when you can walk, they make you lay in a stretcher and, like, sit in the. It's just weird. Anyways, when I got there, he came in and was just just tell them that you were just having a first year breakdown. You know, you freaked out because you're in first year university and it was a lot of stress, and you know, you're okay now and you just really want to go home so you can study for your exam because that's coming up soon. So that's what I did. And the problem was that it wasn't until the next day that there's going to be any doctors there, so I had to stay there overnight, which was kind of torture because the person I was roomed with snored like crazy. So I ended up like sleeping in the common area, and the doctors were like, "Do you want sleeping pills?" And I'm just like, "No, stay with me with your medication." But yeah, it was an experience. I stayed in the mental ward briefly, and then I just recited what he told me. Before that happened, though, he actually like came up and he was like looking all distraught and tired and worn out, and brought me a pizza to eat because their food was genuinely terrible. I mean, they like sterilize everything, which it tastes worse than nothing. But anyway, it was funny. He was going on about how like everyone thinks he looks so tired and how lucky I am that he's bringing me that and all this stuff, and it's just like, yeah, poor you. Yep, poor you. I'm here for no reason, clearly. Like, I wasn't driven crazy at all. Poor you. Anyway. So, I told them what they needed to hear, and they released me. And I don't remember him punishing me or anything for that. I just went home, did my schoolwork, and continued on, and then eventually got in another fight, like usual. But, yeah. Moving back to the other part of the story I was at in the last video, or continuing on rather with that, once I left Jackson's, as I told you, I went back and he basically, I'm not sure if this was like the very first time, I think it was the very first time, he just sat me down in the kitchen and was just basically like, now come on, you didn't mean that. Like, if we did that, it'd basically be like your Aunt Debbie. And the bullshit she pulled with her ex-husband. Because, side note, my aunt's been murdered by her ex-husband because of a mental breakdown situation where, like, their relationship fell apart, and she, at some point, according to him, all we have is his recollection of what happened. She died in the situation, but they were in a fight, and she said to him, "Fuck you, it's over. I don't want to be with you anymore, but I'm going to make you support me, like alimony or whatever." Even though they weren't married, they were common law. But anyways, "I'm going to make you support me for 5 years while I sleep with other men." And then she's like 5'0". She was like 5'3" or 4, maybe 5'5". And he was 6'11" or something, almost 7 foot. Very big height difference. And he just grabbed her by the neck and snapped it. And then laid her in her bed and lit the house on fire. And then jumped out the back window because human instincts or whatever, and he was going to die in the fire, but then he couldn't, whatever. Broke his ankle, went to jail, got out because they ruled it as manslaughter because they convinced the jury that, not entirely unreasonably, she kind of drove him crazy. But anyways, so he was comparing it to that scenario, and he was saying, I was basically saying, I want you to support me while I go fuck other men. And let's be real, that is what I was saying. Because I was saying, be my dad like you were supposed to, like is reasonable, because you're 33 years older than me. But that wasn't reasonable to him at the time, I guess. It's not how he saw things. So, I don't know about repenting, but he certainly, raped me again, and then things proceeded from there. And we immediately went on a trip. It's funny, this is already getting long, so I'm just going to end this with the beginning of the genuine abuse where, well, I don't know. Let's just not draw lines about where abuse started anymore. But anyways, we went on a trip. I mentioned we had a motorhome, and we hadn't left London or anything. We were just up somewhere, and he had a feeling that something was up and something had happened, but he didn't know what. So he started acting all really, really guilty about all the things he'd done to me. And he was like, I could never make up for it. I am just so terrible and I feel so bad and I can't believe it. It's so awful. And I felt really, really bad. And he was doing this on purpose and he was really guilting me. I felt terrible for him that he felt so bad for all that had happened. So I was like, well, maybe I can like even the scales or whatever by telling you that I have now slept with Jackson, because he had me convinced or in this mindset that that was somehow cheating. So I basically was like, well, it's okay because like I actually like I've been with someone else and I sort of cheated on you. And he was just like, I can't believe you cheated on me. I can't believe you did that. That's so depressing. And so I don't know, he was all distraught and like left the motorhome and went and sat under a tree and was all like, bleh. But like the fact that he had me all that it was cheating on him is just like, so what? But yeah, like that's how he manipulated me into admitting what the fuck happened, and then was just like, oh, I can't believe you've done this to me, my heart. And I do believe it was just that it was that evening when he started beating on me for it and being just absolutely livid and pissed, and started kicking me. It began from behind. I told you I'd done this before, kicking me from behind with his steel toe boots, and I put my finger in the way and got my little baseball finger. We started doing that again, except at some point his steel toe boot contacted my bone, my whatever pelvic, the bottom of my pelvic bone, some kind of bone down there between the legs. And it swelled up the left side of my inner labia to the point that I didn't have an inner and outer labia anymore. It was all just a ball of something. It was gruesome. It was disgusting. I thought I was gonna die because I was bleeding a lot. I basically did this like outside the house, and I was just like, I was kind of debilitated at that point. I could hardly walk, and I was really fucked up, and I was trying to like sit down because I was also really weak, but I couldn't sit, of course. So I was like teetering on the edge of something, and then I ended up getting up, and there was just like a lot of blood. And he eventually like brought me inside to clean me up and put me in the bathtub, and then like when I undressed and laid down in the tub, like it was terrifying, to say the least, what I was looking at. Like my body just swollen up in a horrifying way, and then just blood streaming from me, and chunks of blood too, because it was like a really long cut that constantly was trying to clot, but it was in such a bad spot. It was like right along the seam of my labia, so it was just in such a bad spot that it couldn't, and it was so swollen and fucked up that it couldn't close. Like I really probably should have got stitches. I didn't. And it doesn't look so bad down there. Like apparently you can't even tell it. Unless I mention that I've had damage, you can't tell, so. But, yay for labias looking weird. But, it was disgusting and gruesome. Yeah, there's chunks of me going down the drain, and I was just looking at it just like, I'm gonna die. I'm gonna die. And, we went on a trip after that. Like, he took me out to somewhere outside Toronto, I don't remember where. And it was kind of interesting. I didn't stop bleeding for days. Like, it just kept bleeding. So I just, like, wore a pad. And I couldn't really walk very much. Like, it was very, like, I walked like a man with a wedgie, or I don't even know how to explain it, like, wide-legged and weird. and it was very painful to walk, but John felt like it was important for me to try and walk when I could. So he brought me to like this huge parking lot of a weird Walmart somewhere with a train track beside it where this recreational train would go by. Recreational, it was just like this cute little novelty train people would ride, and he sat like a camping chair out beside it, and I just kind of sat there and looked out, and then the train would go by at one point in the day, and people would wave at me and I'd wave at them, and the train would go by back the other way later in the day, and they'd wave and I'd wave back and just be like, you have no idea. No idea. So many times in my life people had no idea. But yeah, that's I guess what I mean about it getting real, in terms of like that was one of my genuinely, like, I feel one of my worst injuries from him. And it was pretty gruesome. And I did heal, but it took a while. And like right as soon as the swelling went down, he was like probing to rape me. And I don't think it was more than a day after that he did. But anyways, there's so much more to be said. Still capable, so I'll start another video after this. But again, trying to keep it in consumable chunks. So until next time, see ya.